Hello and welcome to the Growth Engine podcast with Trice and Ryan. We are here to give you topics about growing your small to mid-sized business. We're sponsored by Healthy Brands Coaching, and we had a great comment come in from social media last week after our episode 2, a topic that came in right on the hotline, the big red phone we have sitting on our desk. I picked it up. So Trice, you want to introduce our topic for the show today?
Yeah, this is a great topic, and it's one that's near and dear to my heart because I've lived it. But we got a great question from somebody that said, "How do you get a CEO to understand marketing?" And I love this topic. I have it's a borderline hot button issue for me. Which it seems like our first few episodes are sort of like my triggers for some reason. I don't know why. Like I like get into these. And I'm like, oh, I would totally want to go off on this. But I think this one's beautiful because as a CMO, one of the biggest struggles is it doesn't have to be a struggle, but one of the biggest opportunities for you is you go into being a CMO or into a new organization, especially in small, medium business, is your connection with the CEO and your relationship with them. And that's going to decide everything for you, from not just what you do with your marketing and how much you love it, to how successful are you going to be? What's your lifespan at a company going to be like? So, I mean, everything sort of hinges on that. So I love this question. So what I did today on starting to kick this off is I basically put 3 things together that I thought were ways in which to help your CEO understand marketing. So first is, let me set this up a little bit in that predominantly most people, and definitely CEOs, don't trust marketing. So just coming straight into the gate, they know they need you. They may not necessarily know why, but they may not trust you right out of the gate, and you've got to earn that. 2, traditionally, most companies, especially in B2B, it's sales culture driven. So it's sales first, marketing second, or sales first, operations second, or operations first and sales second, and then marketing. But either way, marketing is always last. And so that's very traditional in B2B. So it just creates more challenges for you to educate and for you to connect with an organization, but also with the CEO, especially. So third,
agree with that.
Everyone has an opinion on marketing, right? Like, so you just getting into it, everyone has a viewpoint on marketing. It's not necessarily the same for everybody else. Operations may be so operations focused that you're like, I don't have any real context for them other than their customer facing portions as a CMO. So that's something too. And then the last piece is sort of like, just as to think about this, the CMO has the shortest lifespan in an organization. Like the tenure of a CEO now or CMO now, it's like 18 months. It's really, really short. Most of that has to do with the question we're talking about today and your relationship with the CEO and helping your CEO understand marketing. So that I want you to say all that because it sort of sets up like where the context for a CMO is these days. There's so much technology in marketing. It's changing so fast that it's very difficult for an organization, given all the things I just said, to really buy in to marketing because they're just sort of over it a little bit. You know what I mean? I'm tired of hearing about the new shiny thing, probably. Mm-hmm. So, all right.
So I'll comment on, like, you bring up this really important thing about where the CEO puts other parts of his business, like, and where marketing falls into that. And I like that piece of it because I've worked for CEOs where marketing and sales were his number one thing, and he loved it. And he was very good at all the other parts of the business, but he loved marketing and sales and believed in it. And the other guy that I worked for, he spent 90% of his time with other things like sales.
Mm-hmm.
He liked sales. He didn't like marketing, or he didn't understand marketing. And he did spend time with finance, with the CFO. He spent all his time with his top 1 or 2 guys. He didn't give marketing more than 1 hour every 2 to 3 weeks. And so we'll talk about that piece, I'm sure, on the show. But yeah, I agree with where marketing falls a lot of times in that CEO's mind.
Yeah.
And just so our listeners understand, when we say CEO, that does refer sometimes to the size of a company. So
Mm.
just replace what's important, what applies to you here, what's important for you.
Yeah.
It would be like owner, president, CEO. And because they are different size companies, sometimes, I mean, I've
Yeah.
seen small companies where the guy's got 3 employees and he's calling himself the CEO. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Uh, yes. All that's true. And even the context for these three things is different for, like, a medium-sized business. Medium-sized businesses could be $150 million. Like, that's a lot of jack. So their organization looks really different than somebody who's $10 million. Just totally different, night and day. So even that is got different context because of it impacts so many things. So yeah, so take a lot of this sort of with a grain of salt. A lot of it depends on the size of your organization. We come from both of us, small and medium-sized businesses. I've not worked for a Fortune 500 company. So, like, my context is different. I have worked for publicly held companies, but they're a subsidiary. Even that, it's a subsidiary of a publicly held company. It's not the same thing. So, and I wasn't CMO, so I wasn't the decision maker in that such scenario. So, okay, so here's what my list. First is making sure you understand the business and the customer. Like, if you're going to try to connect with your CEO in some way, shape, or form, one of the biggest criticisms of CMOs is they don't really understand the business. They don't really understand, their goal is to understand the customer. So they focus a lot on that. And they are the voice of the customer in most organizations, or should be. They should be looked on as that. Sales often is, because they have so much frontline experience, but marketing should be the one talking to customers in size and scale, and if they're not, I mean, they should really need to be the voice of the customer and be the person that sort of speaks on their behalf. So understanding your organization, what does your sales organization look like? What are their goals? What is your operations team? What do they do? What's their process like? How do they interact with customers? What are their goals? What are your customers? What do they believe? What are they looking for? What are their goals in relation to your type of business in your industry? And then lastly, your CEO. How do they operate inside of the organization, and what are their goals? That's a lot of information, but I think the biggest criticism for CMOs of not having connection to the business in the same way and as deep as those other people would is a red flag to me. Of one, you may not know the business well enough, and two, everyone else knows you don't. And sooner or later, that's going to be important. And the better off, you are in knowing those things, the easier in connecting with all of those people to build marketing will be, because they understand that you get it. You may not have been in the business 20 years, but the thing about marketers, you put them in any situation, they're going to figure out where the pain points are for customers and organizations. And, once they do that, frankly, I feel really good about, my knowledge of the business. But that doesn't necessarily mean everybody else does. So it's that's really important, and it creates partnership, I think, in a lot of ways. So,
yeah. When you were talking about that part of like learning the business, the most successful role that I had in a CMO-like role was a VP of marketing and sales. I realized real quickly that I was going to fail if I didn't learn the industry fast. And I learned, I studied, I read, I went out with technicians. It was a heating and cooling company here in Kansas City. I went out with technicians on service calls, rode with them. I learned what they did. I spent time in customer service, listening to calls come in, and really started taking calls at one point where I could actually handle calls the right way.
Yeah.
I needed to understand how that happened and what the customers said when they called.
Yeah.
I rode
Yep.
with the sales guys. I learned how to do heat load calculations to size air conditioning and furnaces to homes properly. Duct work, I could size duct work properly,
Yeah.
and so learning all those pieces and learning them well, and being able to go out and sell like the sales guys that were working for me. I'd never sold heating and cooling equipment before, and I went out and started doing that part of it, and closing deals and helping customers make their homes more comfortable,
Yeah.
and being very competent to be able to do it. I think at that point in the company, my value raised up high enough that it was at the level of the other executive leadership team. I think it was there with the operations director. I think it was there with the CFO, but it took a lot to get there, and that had very little to do with marketing, more about earning respect and trust.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously that, and understanding the business, because if you can understand the business, you can market it better. And it's probably a lot of understanding the customers and what they're looking for, what their various decision processes might be. But you're right; it ties into that. Now, I was going to ask you though, how long did you feel like that took you?
The process earned people's trust, or
Just that whole process you just described. Is that 30
I think
days? Is it
over.
90?
So I think total, I mean, I think I really went hard on that one about 6 to 12 months, but over a 2 year span, really,
Okay. Yeah.
was because I really wanted to understand and learn and be able to sit in other people's seats for a little bit.
Mhm.
And I truly did want to learn the customer through everybody's eyes.
Yeah.
That allowed me to then go into the service technicians meetings, the
Right.
training meetings, and walk in, and people paid attention. They knew that I had seen it through their eyes, so there was a certain level of respect. I wasn't a technician. I couldn't do the technical work, but they knew I knew what they did, and they loved that part. So
Yeah.
when I asked them about something related to sales or marketing, something I needed done, they would really help me out. And what a great industry, by the way, that was heating and cooling industry and contractor industries in general. I really love.
Yeah.
The people in them are so genuine and so nice, and I love that part about it. So, but yeah, same thing with customer service. If I needed them to learn current promotions, and I did, and I went into their training meetings, like same types of things, they would then open up and ask questions. And they felt very comfortable with me because I sat in there and got to know them as people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I agree with your point 100%. And I think the quicker you can get out in the field and do that, and most CEOs or business owners don't tell you you don't need that. Most will be like, you really want to do that? Great.
Yeah.
Let's schedule that in. You still
Yeah.
got other duties you have to do, but let's make that happen.
Yeah. I agree. I think most are like, they completely understand the benefit of it, but they're surprised often that anybody in marketing feels like that's a beneficial thing to them, because they probably haven't been taught that. Like, you could be their first marketing hire, or number 2 or 3, and your first marketing leader, like that they see as a peer, and you're like, oh, you want to learn about our business? Like, yeah, I don't want to just build relationships with the leaders of the organization. I need to understand your business. This is the only way it's going to happen. So yeah, I think it's a huge opportunity. So
I want to lean back on something we said in the last episode about time frame that the CMO, like, actually, but I take that back. It was episode 1. Time frame that the CMO is at a job,
yeah,
and how long you have, like, a campaign that you want to test, and you might want to roll out there over an 18-month to 36-month time frame. And then you might not be around long enough to see that through. Like, the CEO may not have the patience to have you there that long if he hasn't seen results, right? And
yeah,
that's different. I want to take that and measure that against a training plan that you might have over that same time frame. Telling the CEO, here, I've got a plan to really learn and educate, learn about your industry, educate myself, and really grow in this role and in this company. And that plan stretches over this 18 to 36 months. And And I think he's less likely to let you go and fire you, and more likely to deal with all the marketing ins and outs, while he knows that you're on a career path that he didn't help create. You actually made it happen. And you set forth and said, I want to be a part of this business. And you proved it by setting forth and learning that industry as much as you could. And then really leaning into him and learning what he knows and asking him out of respect for what he's done, the road he's paved. And usually he knows. He's usually done it. Now, if you get into a larger company, the CEO may come from another industry. They may or may not know that much about it, but there's always somebody else that's on the leadership team that usually does and did come up through the ranks.
Yeah, for sure. That's a really great point. That's a really great point. So the good part about that is it leads you into the next phase, right? You now understand the business. You understand the people, the dynamics, probably some of the politics a little bit as well. And you can really start crafting a good plan, right? And this may take a little time. This is not the first 90 days kind of a thing. It takes a little bit of effort to really understand even your own team and what your limitations are. Or if you don't have a team, feel like you understand what you need to build a team, what pieces you need. But either way, you can really start making a plan. And that plan, the way I always look at this, and the way I think you and I talk about this a lot, is marketing is seen so much as a support role to sales enablement, support of the organization, brand maybe somewhat, and voice somewhat, obviously, right? And that a lot of that comes into social. But the way I look at this is your job as a CMO is not to support the organization. It is to grow the business, period. And if you don't look at it that way, and if you struggle to understand the organization and don't know yet how to make a plan that builds growth, then you're not there yet. You need to figure that out first, because that's the goal. Grow the business. All those organizations, all those people we just talked about, they all have goals. The CEO and the sales, for sure, it's revenue of some kind of growth, right? And so your goal isn't to support that goal. I don't like looking at that. That's backseat to me. And I'm like, I'm not here to support your idea of growing the business. I'm here to grow the business. That's my purpose. It's also sales' purpose, but that's my purpose as a marketing person. So I look at it like that. My plan should reflect that. Yes, sales enablement is a portion of that. Customer-facing communication for sales, materials, collateral, whatever they need, that's a part of it, 100%, especially in B2B where you may need more of that. But it's also, I'm the brand. I am the connection to the customer. I am the awareness driver. I am the demand generation, helps the funnel. So to me, it's build a plan that understands customers, includes your brand story, your product story, includes digital, and recognizes the customer funnel. And I'm talking to sales, and sales then conversion, because you influence all of those things. So that's really number two to me is, yes, you can build a plan built on the goals of the company and how you can help grow those and own those as much as the people that are responsible for those goals.
I have struggled in this area, honestly. I think that's why I appreciate this question that came in so much. I've struggled in this area, and it's been a point of pain for me. And I think that's when I have a topic that has pain tied to it, I think it makes a good topic for us.
Yeah, I agree.
And others deal with this, right? So the thing that the area I've had success with on this part of it is, if I know, and if I don't know, I ask the CEO, what is on your plate? Will you tell me what your number 1 and 2, 3 things are? Can you tell me what your 1, 2, and 3 things, like what are the big initiatives you have in your head? Now, if you are a Rockefeller Habits, or if you are a EOS company or any other system that gets this stuff out on paper with goals and rocks and those types of things, and you can see it clearly in your leadership meetings, that's great. Like that really helps out. If not, and even sometimes then you still want to know what's in their head, because what's in their head as the CEO might be different from what the leadership team as a whole has agreed upon. But understanding what is their main initiatives, because if your marketing plan doesn't have a good portion of supporting what that CEO's initiatives are, or his top of mind thing that he's trying to accomplish with the organization, if it doesn't have that in it, you are going to have a hard time convincing him of anything, him or her. You're going to have a hard time basically getting them to understand that you should be spending money on this, doing this. It's worthwhile. Because going into this topic, I wrote down some different things I thought about. And one of them was, if all the things that's in that CEO's head today, where does your stuff come into play? And it might be in the down the 20s or 30s and if you ranked them, and you're coming in here like it's the most important thing in the company. And he's sitting there rolling his eyes, and you don't see it, but he's rolling his eyes. And sometimes you actually do see it. And he's rolling his eye, and you're like, you know that it's frustrating because you haven't gotten your point across.
Yeah.
You're selling him or her on this thing that you could spend hours, you could have the most impressive presentation. It could be all that. And he's not buying it today.
Yeah.
Because it's not a priority currently in their mind. And I want to just give a little love out there to CMOs on this, because you get frustrated at times and there's nothing you could have done differently. Or maybe there's always ways to improve. I guess I should say that, but I would say that don't carry that home with you, please, or to the next day, because it actually doesn't even mean the CEO doesn't like you or love marketing. It just means that in the greater scheme of things, if profitability is on their mind, number one, it could be in operations, it could be a process, or it could be labor, it could be something that's not going right in other parts of the business, and it's way more affecting it than what your A/B split test that you want to run in the next 30 to 60 days is.
Yeah.
They don't care. They have something else to fix, or you won't have a job in a few months, or it may not be that crucial. It could be that you're just not hitting the numbers that shareholders want.
Yeah. That's a great point, because often we as marketers, we get into the weeds, and even as CMOs, right? We get in the weeds. Like, you have to, as just to operate in marketing these days, you have to be in the weeds. And that could mean I'm really focused and passionate about our social media programs and communication. I'm really passionate about our SEO projects. That's really in the weeds shit. But your CEO may not care at all, because especially SEO, right? Like, it's so technical and it's so in the weeds. The real topic is all of this content and stuff that we're doing is raising awareness and increasing connection to our brand, which ultimately leads to better customer relationships, more loyalty, longer customer lifetimes, all those things, more LTV, like customer lifetime value. All that goes up when you have stronger communications, more content, more brand, like all of it goes up. And that's the story. It is not all the bullshit you're doing in your social media stuff. Because frankly, the trust should be, what the hell you're talking about, so I don't have to. Because the communication is, here is how our strategy is impacting demand. Because ultimately that's the goal. Because demand leads to revenue. The more people that ask or want or are interested in, the more people lead to conversion. And so that's the measurable, right? Like, it's hard measurable at times. And your CEO may even say, I'm really interested in hearing all the things. They are not, because they are going to get bored with all the things really quickly. What they mean is, there's a couple of things that are hot buttons for me, and I'd like to talk about those and be up to speed on those things. Not all the things. And your relationship with them and the questions you just mentioned are the ways in which you figure out what are the things that they're interested in versus all the things that you could talk about. And I actually, from experience, like I worked for this CEO who I coined the term, not this is not an uncommon term, but he always had a pet project. And whatever that pet project was for him was the priority for the company. And he could go months being 100% almost focused on that thing because it was strategically aligned with the business for him. But there was still tons of stuff going on outside of that group or that thing. All that stuff was just as important, but he would get consumed by a thing, and you could almost check the calendar by it of, I'm not going to talk to him for a month, or I am going to have a lot of trouble getting his attention for a while. And until this thing is done, and then the other part of it is when that thing's done, he is going to have this moment where it's like, oh shit, I do not know anything about what's going on in the business. I need to learn all the stuff again. Tell me everything. And then it's like a completely different CEO who's totally in the weeds, super in wants to know everything. Like it's a total shift. And so I'll be honest, there were times where I was like, I can't wait for him to find another pet project. Just get the fuck out of my head. But there are other times where I'm like, I need him. I need decisions. I need him to look at these things and say yes. And so it's tough. It's good and bad. Right. And
right.
It's just the lay of the land a little bit. So
yeah.
Anyway.
Going into the topic, another point that I wrote down goes right into this, which is your time that you have with that CEO. We talked about how much time they dedicate with operations sometimes and sales and those types of things. But how much time do they spend with marketing? And how much time can they spend with marketing? But I'm a big believer in the one-on-one meetings with the people that work for you, right? And so one-on-one ones can be great. Sometimes that the one-on-ones aren't used for Q&A and getting approvals and things like that. Sometimes they're more like one-on-one career-based, like how's things going, et cetera.
Right,
but
right.
I do like regular set meetings. It's a dedicated time that you can sit down on one topic. The challenge is I rarely have seen a CEO be able to stay on track with that. They miss meetings, they skip meetings, they push meetings. They cut back meetings. They go, well, we are set to have a meeting every week, but it looks like we can't ever make it. Well, I can make it. You can't make it because he's usually running around doing all kinds of things in the company. And so it is harder for that person to make it.
Sure.
Right.
Right.
But the result of that is, well, we're just trying to schedule too many, I think. And you're thinking as a CMO, I can't get one thing out of you because we can't have time to meet. I need approvals. You haven't given me the authority to make decisions. And therefore I have to have time for you to and then when you meet with them, they want more information than you're willing to give, or than you have prepared to give them, not you're willing to, that you have prepared.
It's a curveball. Like at some point there's like, they want some question you did not foresee.
Yeah. And so my advice on this one is keep the ongoing set meetings once a week. You've got to force it. If you're a CEO hearing this, you've got to show up at these meetings. You cannot keep doing this to your marketing person, your CMO. And when you're doing it to your CMO, understand you're doing it to your culture, your customers, and you're doing this to the growth of your company, to a person who's really passionate about wanting to help you do that.
Yeah.
And you're completely trashing the relationship when you don't.
Yeah.
Now, CMO, different topic. Come in with your shit together. Be prepared. Have a one pager. That's one of my favorite. Have the one pager. On that one pager, have the topic researched. You better start with the problem at the top of the page. What's the problem you're solving? That problem could be that it aligns with one of those top one, two, or three things that the CEO has in their head.
Yep.
That's when it's going to work the best. Here's the problem. Here's my solution. Here's how I arrived at that solution. Could be two or three different options I considered, because that's what the CEO immediately goes into that mode.
Yeah.
What other options did they not consider? So that's why you want to be thorough. I considered this, and this. I chose this because these were the results I thought would come from that. I hope you agree. Get a head nod or not. Might as well stop there and find out. and
Right.
and then go into my plans right below. This is what I want to do, because a lot of CEOs, presidents, business owners, if they agree with the first things you just said, and the initiative is in the budget, or you can do it, and the CMO is going to take care of it, you've got the approval. It's done.
Yeah.
They don't
Yeah.
need to know anything else about the details. The plan, sometimes they don't need
Yeah.
to know the target persona. They don't need to know about the A/B split
Yes,
testing or
exactly.
anything. They already know you understand the problem,
Yep.
and they know. They might ask, like, okay, what markets are we hitting with that? What's the
Or how do
budget?
they compare? You know, like what's happened in this one versus this one? They might have anecdotal sort of questions like that. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it all in house? Are we gonna have to use out of house? Anything out of house? Like, what's okay? Sounds like you really got it together. Go for it. You've got 60 days to get that complete, or 30 days, and I want to see the results of that.
Yeah.
I want to see actual metrics. Metrics.
Yeah.
Put metrics and put details down on that one pager, because if there's not a goal there of something you're trying to achieve, a milestone, if there's not something there that's real measurable, you're going to get a no.
Yeah. That's actually funny you say that, because my third part of this was, like, I've already alluded to partnership, but it's partnership and measurement. And the idea is, I understand the organization. I've built a plan, and that plan is based on my understanding of the organization and understanding of marketing. And I've come up with these solutions. There's not one all encompassing, but all these things. And here's maybe the layer in which we're going to do them. Or here's, you talk about, goals like in rocks. I know what the quarterly rock is. Here's my monthlies that I'm gonna build underneath that, and how I'm gonna roll this out. And next quarter will be an extension of that in some way, and the quarter after that will be an extension of that, and based on what your rock goal probably is for your, or whatever, how you're naming them, but what your goals are for the year, obviously. So my final step was like, you're partnering. Talk about how you're partnering. Like, I understand sales wants this, and I understand operations wants this, and here's how we're going to layer into that. Here's how we're supporting them, and then here's how we're growing the business in these ways, and here's what that means to us from a marketing standpoint. What are we going to do? And here are my goals, and here are the measurables. And when you lay a plan together like that, and put a strategy together that's based on your reflection of what you understand in the company and the business, it is much harder for the CEO to say, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, or I don't trust you, I don't believe in you, because the first hurdle is you don't know what you're talking about, so I can't trust you. So now you're like, oh, well, this person really gets it. They really understand our organization. They're really working toward understanding our organization. And they're use the freaking word partnership, because that's what this is about. Is I want to create partnership between me and the other parts of the organization. I want to understand where they're coming from. Here's how I'm going to do that. Here's how I'm going to continue to build that. And it's much harder to fire you if you've built great relationships with all these people, because you clearly know what you're doing, and so that's just one of the things. And then when you have measurables, you can say, look, everybody has an opinion about what marketing should and shouldn't be doing. That's just a universal thing. But you hired me to be your expert in marketing, so I'm giving you my opinion on how to do this, and this is the plan, and it's based on what I know about marketing, what I know about the team, what I know about the organization, what I know about our goals. And if you lay it out that way, you really set a great framework for your relationship with the CEO, because now you're saying we can understand each other based on the fact that we both understand the team, the organization, the goals, the priorities for the company. We both have good context. So now we can have a much more open conversation about what this process is going to be and how it's going to impact that. And it's much more about you're on more level footing, and you're more of a peer-to-peer, even though you're not, more of a peer-to-peer, and you are a partner and you're approaching it that way. And so I'll say that doesn't mean your CEO's, he or she is going to agree with your marketing approach, but it's much more likely they're going to listen to you and let you really dive into it and help them understand how it builds growth. All that being said, at the end of the day, they're the decision maker. It's their money, and also it's their business. And or even if they're representing a shareholder group or something like that, they're responsible for that growth ultimately. So they can say yes or no. And if you have good enough context and rapport and partnership, you can have good debates and healthy dialogue about why, one way or the other. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of the day, frankly, if they don't agree with you and you really don't think that they've done all the things, it just flat out might not be the place for you. They may not really need a strategist. They may really just need an executor. That's okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
At the end, we've all lived that. Like every CMO in the world is, well, maybe they weren't really looking for somebody that built strategy. What they were really looking for is somebody who built execution. Mm-hmm. That's different. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Plenty of people have, including both of us, have plenty of opportunities to have that kind of a discussion with CEOs. And they may not say it, but at the end of the day, if they are willing to give you the resources to test your ideas, then they believe that you can find something, you can figure it out. And if they don't, and they tell you what to do, then they don't, and they may never, and that's okay too. So, and you have to chalk it up as a learning opportunity. And we've talked about this before as well. But I think the biggest thing is if you can build partnership, then you can build a plan, and you can you can try to help the CEO understand marketing and back to our original question. You can help the CEO understand marketing, and you can help the organization use marketing the best way possible, the ideal way for that situation. And if they can't, then they can't.
I look at that relationship you're talking about between the CEO and the CMO. I look at that relationship as it's not built overnight. It takes the right things, and it's just like nurturing, prospects to become customers, right? You're trying to get somewhere in this relationship with them. So I think it's important to understand, how do they learn best? Everybody learns differently. How does that CEO learn? And so if that person listens to podcasts on the drive-in, he likes podcasts, then look at the things you wish you could teach them, and then find some really interesting podcast episodes. They may not, I wouldn't say listen to all of them. I would find an actual episode that addresses the things that you're trying to say, because third-party endorsements of your ideas and what you're trying to get accomplished are really much more effective than you just talking until the end of time.
Yep.
I had a CEO who loved articles. He put articles in my inbox every day. And I learned a lot, let me tell you that, because he'd ask me, like, did you read that? He'd highlight things, and
yes, I totally did.
But you can do it back. And if that's the way they are, that's the way they also like it back. And then they see that you're really engaged in the business, right? So learning how to understand how they learn is important, and understanding that you have a campaign now that you have to do. It's different if the CEO comes to you and says, here's a main initiative I need a plan on my desk tomorrow. It's approved as soon as I get it, type of stuff, right? Like, that's different. I'm talking about the stuff that you really want to get done, tie it back to that company goal somehow, some way, and prove through that one pager, the metrics and all the things that you have, the strategy, that it will help you get to that goal or complete that initiative. And then start working on the pieces that are going to educate them to understand your solve, your solution. I think this part is really important, because I have seen a lot of the situation where, whether it's the CMO or another executive leader, does the surprise thing where they get a meeting out of nowhere set up with the CEO, and they do a gotcha thing. They may pull out a one pager, or they have a whole thing of strategy they've done, and it's related to something that doesn't tie back to the goals. It isn't even a problem that the CEO has even said is a problem or understands that there's a problem. Yeah. And now you're actually trying to convince them that the problem exists, let alone that your solution and the costs are all worth it. You just really, instead of going forward and trying to be like the one who has these genius ideas and you're going to solve things and be a real like mover and shaker, you actually just buried a 6-foot hole in the ground for yourself, because now you've got to climb out of the hole before you can start getting back in a good place with that person to get other things approved. You are going backwards.
Yeah. Well, and it's totally, and this happens in marketing all the time, right? It is totally likely that in your department, whatever department you're in, you have a problem that you think is very significant, that does not align with the future goals of the company, but it may significantly impair your ability to achieve. And whether that is we have a technology problem, or we have a customer type problem, we have whatever the internal problem, right? We have an employee problem. Like, those are all things that happen all the time. And as a CEO, you may need to be aware of you want to be aware of those kinds of things. Departmentally, what are the things that you consider to be your, problem areas, and what you're going to do about them? But you're right. They have to tie back to the organization in some way. If you're left fielding the shit out of this something, it's gonna sit on the back burner. Doesn't matter how big of a part, unless you can 100% handle it and 100% have the resources to handle it, and the CEO never needs to know, and it's something that that is manageable and you're empowered to handle, then fine, handle. But if it's left field and you need the CEO to think it's important, you better have some really good connection with the organization. Like, why is this relevant to us? Problem employees are a great one, because not a great problem to have, but that's important. So, you have somebody coming in or out of the organization for whatever reason, like that's important to people.
I want to talk about timeframes on things that we're talking about here. So timeframes. If you're new to the CMO role or the marketing director or any high level leadership, right? The top guy in the marketing component, right? And you're new to the organization. My advice is focus on the rocks first, the things that are this quarter. Focus on the rocks thing. How can I build trust by helping the organization and leadership team hit these immediate goals we have right in front of us?
Yeah.
When I get that trust, I can look at other programs that are built around hitting the annual goals and get more approvals and more trust to do those things and bigger initiatives. When you talked about something that's long-term, and I immediately thought about our discussions on SWOT and pest analysis, right? Doing different, so strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. SWOT, past, political, economical, social, and technical influences that can alter your business, good or bad. And when I start thinking about those things, those are more long-term, a lot of times things that you need to be aware of in your market or industry or with competition. And you need to start moving the needle on those things. But let's be realistic. Some of that stuff might be secondary, third in priority to the CEO. And then what size of company you're in is crucial to understanding this. So my number one advice on today is marketing leader. What size of company are you in? If you are in a small business and you've worked in big business, you come from larger companies and you're now working as that marketing leader in a small growing business or a startup, and you come out, talking about these long-term things that are money out of the pocket starting right now, you're going to get shut down. Nobody's going to listen to it because they're trying to make payroll and they're trying to hit goals they're trying to hit things right now that are going to make sure their business survives, lives, and dies. And so make sure that the recommendations and the things that you're focusing on, the conversations you're having, are right sized and right timed. Because if you're then at the next level of business, they might start to be able to go past the budget stretches a little bit further now. They might be able to look at those types of things. And that's why when you're a true like CMO in a larger company or mid-sized company, that's when the CEO has a tolerance for looking at, let's talk about what's going on in the marketplace and the trends in the industry. Until you get there, you can think about it. You can angle your strategies with it to help combat it a little bit. But I wouldn't say that you need to pick up that flag and go marching down the street on innovation and all this other stuff before the company is even there. So, and how to get the CEO to understand marketing. I think we circled this wagon. Like I
probably beat the horse a little bit on that.
No, one. I think we hit on a lot of things. I don't think you can totally cover this topic in an episode.
There's so much information out there about this,
But I hope that we've got some takeaways from our listeners. From the CMO standpoint, I hope you've got some takeaways from this or some enlightenment. And from the CEO standpoint, I hope you've gotten to hear a lot of where the CMO's mind is with these topics, and from their viewpoint and their seat, what it looks like, and maybe there's some changes that you can make in your organization.
You've been both a CMO and CEO, so you have a different context than most anyone, frankly, for sure than me. I'm 100% sales and marketing in my career, and you've done all three: sales, marketing, and CEO leadership and business owner. And so it's hard for me. I love hearing from CEOs on this because their context for this conversation is different than mine. And especially if they're the business owner, or actually in both cases, if they're responsible to a board or group of people, like that's an enormous amount of pressure. And if you're the business owner, that's a unique type of pressure, self-induced and self-giving probably pressure. But I love perspective from people like that on this. And I'd love to hear, like I think we both would, of, email us, hit us up on LinkedIn, whatever. We love this topic. I would love to have somebody on that wants to argue about it or has a different perspective, just that they want to put out there in the world.
Comment on the posts.
Definitely.
And let's talk it through. Like let's put it out there, right? And maybe we'll have a future show with that conversation with the CEO and the CMO outside of us and expand that topic. So, but I think we've got the topic nailed today with the time we've got. I appreciate everybody listening. Healthy Brands Coaching is a coaching business that can bring in some of the systems and processes and strategies to kind of bring all these things together in your organization and your leadership teams, and then get alignment on those teams and then grow. So just a little pitch here for Healthy Brands Coaching, and who sponsors the show and pays for all the production. And I thank you, Trice, for bringing the insight on the CMO's view on this. It was great, and I love your 3 points. I thought they were dead on.
I appreciate it. Thank you, and we'll talk again next week. So
okay.